Welcome to Binge Theory, the coolest corner on the internet. Today we have with us Logan.
Hey.
And we have Eric.
Hello.
This was my turn in the barrel where I get to recommend a film that we watch and then discuss and dismantle and pontificate over all the good stuff. So the movie I chose this time around was called Drive. It came out in 2011, starring Ryan Gosling. And I just want to say right off the top, the director of this was Nicholas Winding Refn. I can never pronounce his name correctly. Matter of fact, I think he has NWF as his nom de plume when you see him on credits. He's done some really interesting films. He did Valhalla Rising. I don't know if anybody's ever seen that. It stars the guy who was in Rogue One. He also played Hannibal. His name is Mads Mikkelsen.
Oh, okay, sure.
And very interesting film, almost no dialogue. So you can tell this guy has, a lot of work with visuals and scores. He also directed a film that came out recently that I saw called Neon Demon. And that one was a little odd. It dealt with LA again, had some interesting cameos like Keanu Reeves, but it starred Ellie Fanning. And it was interesting about the model subculture in LA. And he also did another film with Ryan Gosling called Only God Forgives. And that was shot in Thailand and is very dark about street fighting, underworld, kind of stuff with mob ties. Anyway, this director has a very specific, we'll say, perspective on the art. And one of the reasons I recommended it to you guys was the storyline is pretty straightforward. But, the craft is what really hooked me, regarding the score, the cinematography, and the pacing. So, and Logan already filled me in that he saw it in a rather unorthodox way. So this will be interesting to see, what he has, thought-wise in regards to how the film went. But I'm going to quick give the gist, and then I'll open it up for, our discussion. The movie Drive stars Ryan Gosling, who plays a stunt driver / mechanic who is in LA. He lives next to this woman, and I love her. She's been in some other features as well. She was in the movie Great Gatsby. Her name is Carrie Mulligan, and I love her to death. I can't say enough good things about her, but she's a neighbor with a little boy. He befriends her and the little boy. He's kind of a man of mystery, and he, befriends her. And she has a husband who just recently got out of prison and requires Ryan Gosling's skills as a stuntman / driver to help him do the big score to make all the monies. And that's when all the things start to happen and the story starts to go off the rails. But that being said, I'm really curious. Logan, I want to jump to you quick to see how you saw this and your first thoughts on the overall film.
I thought it was beautiful. The use of timing was really what struck me on this. He direct, whether it was the director or cinematographer or whoever exactly it was, had the ability to, again, kind of like some of the older horror movies, really take its time. It didn't need to be at this frenetic pace the whole time. They lingered on emotions. They lingered on faces. They lingered on, what is it? It's like, I forget, it's like 38 or so minutes in, right when they kind of have the fun day driving around and they come back. And that conversation with him sitting in the window and her standing there, it's like, they'll talk and then 2 or 3 beats before they answer, and I've never been that scene just sticks with me in that watching her breath change, the way her chest rose and fell with that kind of hint of I kind of like you tension. It's like I could feel it seeing that. It was gorgeous, and just to take the time and the delicacy to frame that perfectly was just out of this world.
If I can, Logan,
Yeah.
I'm so glad that you said that and that you saw that. I thought I was the only one that literally watched her breath change cadence when she was in
Totally.
his presence.
No, that
also
mesmerized me.
Also, when she was sitting in the hall during
Mhm.
the party, and I'm watching her, and her chest is, her heart is going a million. How do you act that your heart is racing?
How can you show that on the screen even? It's just beautiful, just incredible.
And that is the perfect definition of show don't tell.
Yes.
And those beats that you're
Yes.
talking about, it draws you in, and there's so much unsaid between them that you're falling in love with them.
Absolutely.
There's this, and I just saw it again
Yeah.
an hour before we started, and there's a scene, when they're in her place, and she's sitting, she's like offering him water, and he's like sure, and he's just looking at her, and she's looking at him, and she's like, so you drive? Is that dangerous? And he just takes a beat. And
So much time.
He just takes
all the time in the world, and it's not awkward timing either. It's just perfect. It's just wonderful the way that it's done. All the way through to the end of it, when there's literally a full 40 seconds. And I would love to know if this was filmed in real life, filmed using some of the slow motion that they did, which was a really interesting touch, the way they cut the speed of the film down in certain places to almost, just draw it out. But still have kind of action and movement.
The parking lot scene, is that what you're talking about?
It's him sitting in the car after he just killed the last guy, and he literally doesn't blink for 40 seconds. I watched to see how long that was, and then he moves, and it's like, was it paused? Was it slow mode? Did he really manage to keep himself that still for that long? It almost startled me when he blinked, because I was like, okay, he's dead. This is how they're going to end it. Fade to black. No. Oh, okay. It was just
so deliberate. It's
so deliberate, and just the timing and the everything that they took was just glorious. And I think I saw that so much more, and that's because I saw it with no sound and only subtitles.
Wow. You know what? That probably did. The only thing that might have hurt was some of the score, because it had
score and music.
Yeah, it had just amazing 80s synth.
And I want to go back and listen to that and see how that kind of changes or kind of looks at the film for me. But I've got kids, and I could only watch it when, the baby was napping, or I had some kind of cartoon on for the other ones. And the only way I could actually get to it was subtitled on my phone with no sound. And
I got to see it that way.
Beautiful, beautiful way to watch that film.
All right, Eric, please give us some counterweight here, because Logan and I are falling in love with this movie all over again. What were your thoughts on it?
Okay, so I did see this movie initially in the theater. This would have been a long time ago. And I remembered, in my younger days, walking out of the theater and not feeling satisfied, it didn't touch me. I didn't appreciate it, but, I was much younger at the time. And I don't think I had really a love for Southern California as much as I've developed living outside of Southern California for the last 10 years of my life. So, at this moment, I have a longing to be in Southern California. Luckily, I moved back. So that's kind of where I'm coming from when I watch this movie. I already appreciate it because I know it's filmed all throughout LA, which I just think is great. I definitely enjoyed the movie the second time. I enjoyed it very much. The soundtrack was incredible. the suspense of being right next to a getaway driver, you know, while he's waiting for some amateurs to come out of a stereo shop, you know. And I guess just really appreciating all of the movie. I knew the beginning and the end of the movie, but as a viewer now, I'm appreciating, like you said, Julian, the craft of how they made the movie, the beautiful shots that were taken in the movie. You know, very good cinematography. The music was amazing. Again, I watched this with my fiance. This is kind of a new thing for us, you know, to kind of watch critically acclaimed movies. It's not something that we did a whole lot in the past, but it's very refreshing to watch something like that with her and hear what she has to say about it, how she experiences it.
What are we doing? Why are we talking to you? Bring her on. Yeah, come on. What are you contributing?
Well, perhaps she could come on to a future one. She's got something going on right now, but that sounds excellent.
No, I didn't know.
She's got a lot of.
Yeah, I didn't know you two watched it.
What's that?
I'm sorry, I didn't know you two watched it together. That is fantastic. Yeah, I'm really curious to get her as well. I'm sorry, but go ahead.
Okay, give me one second because I have a job and I have to take this pie crust out of the oven.
Oh, no worries. We're doing baking.
I'll be right back. So.
Yeah. No, this is the baking.
Sorry about that.
No, we're good.
Quarantine multitasking.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. I want to. I'm glad we all are on the same page because the last two films we watched, Lawrence of Arabia and Yojimbo, they were such departures from this. I was trying to keep it on the same, at least the same quality of film, but this is a totally different genre, of course, different time, and I got so much of it, but it's subjective. So I didn't know if you two would appreciate it, and it means so much that you have because we can now start carving this lovely piece of film up because I have some specific scenes I want to get both of your takes on, and there's a lot of metaphor, and I've seen this film a few times, so there's a lot of symbolism and metaphor that I think this is putting out there that's kind of obvious. Some of it's obvious, some of it's not so much. But first of all, Eric, I'm so glad that you like the cinematography, the score. I definitely feel that some films, if they can actually make the location a part of the story without shoving it in your face, like New York City, and look, here's the Washington. I mean, here's the the World Trade Center, or here's the the Empire State Building, or here's Rockefeller Plaza. They don't, literally, it's not so much on the nose. You can see some palm trees, you can see the skyline, you see some of the streets, but it's not driving it home that this is LA. It's just where it takes place. And I appreciate that so much when it's more just assumed. And one of the things I really loved about this film is, and Logan hit the nail on the head about a lot of the beats. A lot of the moments in here, they give you like no exposition. They don't even finish sentences. It's literally like there was a scene in the hotel room where and we got to talk about that hotel scene, but he goes to the other room and he comes back. No, she goes to the restroom. And again, we'll talk about what he did before that and our thoughts on that. But he just looks at the phone. Now, a lot of directors would then you'd show a close-up of the screen and see the text and, and would give it away. They don't do any of that. He just looks at the phone and looks at her. So you don't know what the phone says. You just have to assume that it was some sort of a heads up, here we come, or we'll be there in a few minutes. But I love that, how it doesn't take the audience. It doesn't have to spoon feed the audience the actual ongoings of what's happening. It's just you're looking at it and you get it. And it forces you to immerse yourself in it more because they're not telling you what to think. You're extrapolating that from what the images are. But I wanted to just point out one thing, and I wanted to see if you guys got it. Did you know what the scorpion on his jacket represented? Or did you even notice the scorpion on his jacket?
I noticed it, but I didn't think twice about it.
Eric?
Oh, I would say I definitely noticed about it. Sorry. I definitely noticed it. And for me, it was just, I felt like there's a reason that we keep seeing this scorpion. And in addition to that, there's a reason we also see him in a white jacket. It's a white jacket, obviously, right? And my sense with the scorpion was just that this is a defensive creature, right? Who, if you mess with it, it will kill you. And that's really all. That's all I took away from that. From the white jacket, I really felt like this is a good guy. We're going to see over time that this jacket is going to get dirtier and bloody and black and nasty, and that is just that's who he is, and that's the journey that he's on, you know. And he's not going to take this jacket off, and he's had this jacket for years, and so that's what I got from the scorpion and the jacket. What did you get?
I want to add, and I'm going to go back to our discussion on Yojimbo, where we had discussions about hero versus anti-hero versus just opportunistic, out for self characters. Here's what I got from that scorpion. To me, that represented that story of the scorpion and the frog. And again, forgive me for over explaining it, but for our audience, there is an old tale about a scorpion that approached a frog on one side of a river, and he said to the frog, "Hey, I can't make it across. Can I ride on your back and you take me across to the other side of the river?" And the frog says, "Why would I do that? You're going to sting me." And the scorpion says, "Why would I sting you? If I do, we both drown. There's nothing in that for me. Come on, just take me across." And the frog thinks about it. He goes, "Yeah, that makes sense." So the scorpion hops on the frog's back and they proceed through the river. And halfway across the river, all of a sudden the frog feels this sting in its back, the searing pain. And he looks up, and sure enough, the scorpion's just stinging him. And he says, why would you do that? We're both going to die now. And the scorpion says, "I'm a scorpion. It's what I do." And I think that is exactly what
nature.
It's in his nature. And I think that entire logo on his back, it is basically, to your point, Eric, is that, yeah, he is very capable of extreme violence, but not because of malice or rage. It's just what he does. And and I've seen this a few times, so I've started to kind of come up with the idea that he's a monster. He is a complete psychopath.
Well, you see that in the elevator.
Thank you.
Okay.
There's a lot of scenes. There are a lot of scenes that without the relationship with him and her, he's a complete maniac. And I think that's the funny thing is you see a soft side of him only with her. And everybody else that approaches him, because there's specific scenes that first of all, he's very cold and just calculated and methodical. In the very beginning, when he's talking about his role in any heist that he's doing, because he's a getaway driver.
I mean, he's basically sociopathic, for lack of a better term.
Exactly. No, exactly right. And he just doesn't care. He'll do things because, again, and this is why it reminded me of Yojimbo. He has a skill set, and he doesn't really care what he applies it to, but he comes across, again, the roguish wanderer comes across something that all of a sudden tugs at his heartstrings. Now, does that make him less of a monster, or is it basically he has something to now fight for? So that's just his new thing. He's basically smitten by this person, but that doesn't make him any less of a scorpion. So that's the elevator scene, I think, was so poignant because there's a scene where he's on an elevator and a man is coming to kill them both. And he notices it, and he's in the elevator with her and the assassin that's coming to kill him. But he takes a beat, and again, Logan, tell me you didn't love this scene.
The slow motion, the turn, the breathing, the every detail of them together.
The dimming of the light.
Oh, everything. It was just extraordinary, and it took so much time. Not more than it needed, but not a second less than it needed. It was just perfect. And then immediate juxtaposition.
It was, and just for those who, I'm assuming if you want a detailed analysis of this, you have seen the film, but exactly, Logan. He does the most tender, passionate, heartwarming kiss ever. And the lighting is golden, and it's so soft and just so beautifully shot and well lit. And then
the most human love story you could picture, just right there in that second. And
then he turns around and he starts to stomp this guy's head into pulp. And again, the face that he makes when he turns around and she's out of the elevator, she's like, this guy's out of his mind. Because he didn't just knock him out. He literally removed his head.
Oh, he went, and the way that you could see which kick even was, that was the one.
That was the audio. Yeah, the audio. Great sound.
No audio. Remember, I didn't have any audio.
Oh.
I could see it in his body language and how far it was like, kick, further. Oh, what did he just do?
Yeah,
didn't need a single sound to be able to get that impeccably clearly.
I gotta see it with the sound because, and again, the dialogue is so crisp. It's not flowery. It's just very to the point. And I'm really curious what it looked like to see them having that dialogue with no audio. It probably was beautiful because, like you're saying, the beats, he's just smiling and you're focusing on everything but the soundtrack. But the soundtrack was phenomenal, especially when they had the Fun Day and the song, I forget the name of the band, but A Real Human Being, which obviously was another wink, wink, nudge, nudge. That, this is a real human being. He's a good guy. Isn't this sweet? Oh, he just stomped somebody's head into pulp.
And they put the lyrics up to some of those songs through. So some of the songs with words, they actually had subtitled as lyrics. So I knew there was a song, and I could just read the lyrics of the song as it was kind of narrating the situation.
That is the first moment that I realized he was a maniac was because, again, he does these getaway jobs, as I guess he's a criminal Uber to a certain extent. And one of the guys that had worked with him in the past came up to him at a diner, and he's like, "Hey, I got a new job for you." And he just looks at him, and it's not like, in a hero in a movie would say, "I'm not interested, leave me alone, I'm out of that," or something. They would try to de-escalate it. He goes the exact opposite direction. The words out of his mouth were, "How about this? How about you shut it before I kick your teeth down your throat and shut it for you?" I mean, again, Scorpion. He doesn't care. He's a maniac. But because we see him with his his heart on his sleeve, we mistake him for human. And I think that was that's what I took away from it, is that he looks like a human, but he's not. He's a monster. And they even play that up when he puts on the mask to take the hit out when he goes rampaging.
And then the lighting of the I want to say watchtower, but that's the wrong lighthouse. The lighting of the lighthouse to make it like a flashing horror scene. I mean, he could have been Jason.
He's a monster. He was always a monster.
Yeah.
He was basically like if Jason Voorhees fell in love.
Yep.
And and again, it was amazing. Now, here's the funny thing. We're not even talking about the cast. The cast
is exceptional.
You got Ron Perlman. You have, and I forget what's her name from. Oh, you got Bryan Cranston. He was in it. Albert Brooks, which he's normally comedies, but he did a great dramatic heavy. Oscar Isaac. And Christina Hendricks from Mad Men, which I'd never really seen her out of that role, but she was really good.
Or Firefly, depending on how deep you want to go.
Exactly. But it was just an amazing cast with very small parts, and everybody was very utilized within the amount that they were needed. They weren't, and you got a little glimpse of their backstory, but there was no history. The only thing you know about Ryan Gosling's character, first of all, he doesn't have a name. They don't even credit him with a name. His name is Driver. And I think the only, if I can remember, Bryan Cranston said, whose name was Shannon in the movie.
Kid.
Kid.
Yeah, he called him Kid, and he said, yeah, he came in off the street 5 years ago, and he's been working here ever since. That's it. That's all the backstory you get on Ryan Gosling's character. But so that is what I think the whole Scorpion represents, is that this guy's a monster who just happened to fall in love.
Okay.
But yeah, he was very capable and very violent when he had to be. Notice something else, and I'll just throw in this other analogy or metaphor. He never carried a gun, never used a gun. He used a hammer and he used knives. And so he was very, hands-on. There was no, it's almost like he was adverse to guns, which, was kind of goes into that sadist kind of a mindset. It just seemed very, I mean, when he went into the exotic dancer dressing room, and he just, again, not a lot of movies would just have him try and start a dialogue. No, first thing he does, just starts cracking the guy's knuckles, and then it's the whole thing is just he is a maniac. But
yeah,
but with
I don't.
no, please, Eric. I definitely want different thoughts.
No, that's definitely an interesting take on him. I mean, I didn't get that far with his wrapping my head around him. I really thought that I really got the kind of don't mess with me kind of thing. He's never going to come after somebody for no reason. In my, when I'm watching the movie, I really felt like he was assaulted, by the things that, by the threats, and so that's why he went on this violent rampage. That was what I got from it. Obviously, I'm very curious about his origin. His backstory, I want to know more. When did he come to LA? I want to know what else is in his apartment, if anything. I want to know, why does he stick around with that Bryan Cranston guy who's clearly taking advantage of him? Was Bryan Cranston perhaps providing some kind of cover for him, with his mafia ties? I don't know. I mean, when I'm watching a movie, these are the things that keep me interested. I like to think about these things that are not on the screen, sometimes.
I like it. That's one of the things that I like, is that it kind of makes you want to know more. No, you're 100% right. And I do have thoughts on the Bryan Cranston role. I mean, besides the comic relief, because he does have some kind of, endearing qualities to him. And you're saying I would say that, again, being a sociopath, you probably don't have a lot of people in your life. And I think he was friends with Cranston, but only to the extent that he understood Cranston's character. So he didn't see him as a threat or something. He just was, he knew what Cranston was. And that's why when Cranston was like, and I get 30%, he was like, there it is. He knew what Cranston was all about. And that probably makes him not a threat. Because I think that's kind of the world he was living in, was you hit them hard before they hit you. And Cranston, figuratively and literally, was, for lack of a better term, lame. He could not attack him or hurt him or be a threat to him. I don't know if that's what they were trying to make with the leg brace that he had, that he was literally unable to be a threat or a I mean, maybe I'm digging a little too deep in that.
Right.
But
No, I don't see it that way. See, I think the whole story with him and Irene work because of the establishment of the relationship with him and Bryan Cranston's character Shannon. I think you're absolutely right, and I definitely saw him as that kind of sociopathic, like, I can drive and I'm good at it, and I don't have emotions, so I can do whatever I need to do in whatever situation I need to do. And he came in, like he said, 5 years ago, and you saw the relationship that he had with Shannon. It was not the kind of adversarial, you're just giving me kind of this, work kind of a relationship. I think it showed just enough of him actually. I think if you saw the initial, again, if we were to go back in this kind of reality, if you will, and see him when he first met Shannon till now, I think there would be a big change. And I think that relationship with Shannon gives the audience just a glimpse of humanization in order to not make the relationship with Irene seem like it came out of nowhere. Okay, the girl turns the sociopath into a human. How many times have you seen that?
yeah,
It breaks that completely by giving him this relationship with this guy who, look, the guy is just one of those people who never has good luck. He had a job, he lost a leg. He, tried to make a buck, he's out of money. He tries to start this, and he needs a loan from a loan shark. Like, it's just this never on a good luck kind of a guy. And he actually does feel for him, and there's just enough of that in the relationship to crack his kind of sociopathic armor, so that when Irene kind of steps in and ends up kind of getting involved there's a plausible, like, next step to adding that sliver of humanization into his character. And without Bryan Cranston playing it as well as he did, I don't think the whole movie works.
You know what? Yeah, brilliant point. And I can see that now, that Bryan Cranston gave him a little bit of that human backstory.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why he said, oh yeah, he came in 5 years and so it's not like because it did, at first I was thinking it was more of just an agent, like, hey, I got a job for you, kind of like a management type of a deal. But no, he felt for the kid, and the kid, they did have a relationship as much as you could have. Again, I still think that there's some severe issues going on with Ryan Gosling's character. Yeah. But
I mean, there was clearly a significant relationship, because what was the first thing he did? After everything really went to hell in a handbasket, he went to him like, get out, save yourself, try and survive, live. Like, he actually cared about the well-being of that Shannon character. And that just solidified how much that was, the crack in his armor that led to him being able to be influenced by whatever he felt for Irene.
And he was about to take his head off when he found out that he gave up them and Irene. And
I would argue that's the only aspect of restraint we ever saw him show in the entire movie.
That's an excellent point. Yeah, because you don't want to be elevator guy. Okay, now let's also talk about the hotel scene. Again, you talk about pacing and tension, and again, revealing the monster that this guy is. And I find it very interesting because, again, Eric hit a great point on the head. Is he starts off with this literally a shiny, pristine, like neon glowing white jacket with a logo of a scorpion on the back. And as you go through it, it's just caked in blood from you don't even know who, because he's been going on a killing spree. But the hotel scene, first of all, when he realizes that there was a double cross, his go-to is not to try and reason. His go-to is force. So he is very physical with the Christina Hendricks, her character.
Blanche.
Thank you, Blanche. And he's not mincing words. Matter of fact, he goes right to the hands-on. So that's, that can be very upsetting to see, especially if he were a hero. You'd be like, wow, he just cracked her in the mouth for, no reason. He probably could have asked her first. And so he started, and then he threatened to hurt her. And you just see that this guy is kind of capable of anything, but the only thing that he cares about is the only thing he'll protect. So yeah, Bryan Cranston and Irene. So he goes from these abrupt swings from, protecting to destroying. And that scene where, again, I brought it up earlier, where he says, "You're going to take me there now, or he'll hurt her." And then when she goes to get herself ready in the bathroom, he just looks at the phone. You have to assume that he's and again, it's all in the directing, because there is no close up of what the phone says. You just know that he knows. Right. And then you see the shadow coming over his shoulder against the wall, which is just so well shot. And then he, it goes into slow motion, and she gets killed very brutally. By the way, the violence is very brutal, and the way she gets dispatched in the bathroom, very brutal. And he throws the mattress against the door, and he's hiding, but he's not panicked. He's just lying in wait. And again, this guy is
always calculated any scenario,
and he's too cool in these high stressful situations. It's almost like this is where his mindset it goes to. It's okay. This is violent day number 2 or something on his list. And when he goes into the bathroom and kills the guy with a shower rod, again, stabbing him, with a shower rod, because I think that's his go-to, is just to puncture people or something to that respect. I thought that scene. Oh, and again, when they do the long take on his face after he kills them both, and it has to be, Logan, it has to be like a 15-minute just look on his blood-covered face, and it's the same face that he has in the elevator.
Yep, same face.
It's psycho face, and I'll say this: Ryan Gosling can do an intense face. He doesn't even have to try. He always has like that stone kind of face. But this dials it up a notch, where you're just like, I don't want to be in the room with this guy.
No.
And but yeah, there's so many scenes like that just show what he's capable of, and it was just insane. But what did you think of that scene, Eric, in the hotel room?
Yeah, I thought it was good. Are you guys still there?
Oh yeah, can you hear us?
Oh.
Hello.
Oh yeah, I can. The video cut out.
Yeah, you're frozen actually right now. Oh, there you go.
Okay. So the scene in the hotel room, I thought it was good. We're definitely in a different location in Southern California. We're far into the inland. This is a place called San Fernando. I looked up some of the locations, because I was very interested in some of the locations that that they shot at. And so this is a ways from LA. They're way out in the valley. The scene in the hotel room I thought was great. Ryan Gosling is he's a top rank actor, and a lot of the moments in the movie that I liked was, they put the camera on his face, and he really didn't have much dialogue to speak, but you didn't need that. And that harkens me back to Steve McQueen, where Steve McQueen, he doesn't need to say a lot. He can, the classic Steve McQueen is just look at the ground, and that's his thing. So I thought that was a good part of the movie, and I was ready for what was going to come next. I didn't know what was left in the roller coaster. So
I definitely agree with you, and I think that's one of the things that also makes his character so intriguing is the lack of dialogue. Because you first of all, this was very, and I know, Eric, you probably felt this as well because I saw it in theaters too when this came out like 9 years ago. Is you're expecting a lot of driving. There's only 2 scenes pretty much where he's driving. Everything else is just him being a psycho killer. But
I think that's probably part of the reason why I was not satisfied in the beginning, because I was expecting
seconds,
I was expecting Bullet,
Yes.
And I didn't get Bullet.
And
Yeah, no.
That's okay.
I think you're 100% right. And that was kind of a little, I don't want to say false advertising, but when you see, a picture of a car and him with racing gloves and a racing jacket, you're expecting, you're gone in 60 seconds. You're expecting bullet. You're expecting, some high tension, white knuckle car chase. And the very beginning, where he's pulling off a job and he's running from LA, the aerial pursuit and the cops, that was a great starting point. And how he had the radio playing. And at first you're just thinking that he's a fan of basketball, but he was listening for when the game lets out so he can make sure that he goes into the parking garage at the very moment that everybody else is there. That was systematic. That was so calculated and so cool-headed. Because again, he's running from the police, but that was his entire plan, was just to lead them on a chase and then make it to the arena right as they let out. And that's why he's listening to the game while he's running. Again, it's kind of reminds me of Baby Driver to a certain extent, where that whole, I don't know if you have Baby Driver, but I would say this.
I've seen that, yes.
Yeah, I would say this one thing, because that was the first driving scene. The second driving scene was at the pawn shop job, which again, it was great. But I think what's really interesting is how they chose to shoot a lot of this in daylight. And that tends to take a lot of the slickness away and the stylized, like the lights flashing fast and a lot of the speed. Because, they were on what seemed like, and again, I'm showing my age here, but those California streets in the valley were where they would shoot clips or, a lot of like the low speed action sequences where it looks like they're going 45 miles an hour, but the speedometer says 90. And, but it was fine, but it was not a high tension speed chase. It was just like, it was very brief and abrupt, and he got rid of them, and he was on his way. But those are the only two driving scenes. So I think obviously the term drive is more symbolic towards him, and not, it's more of a description as opposed to an action. Yeah. I really liked a lot of the cinematography in the movie. I really like that one shot where they're in the what we call the LA River. It's actually, just for sewage runoff, right? Right.
And but they're driving through there, and they have that one shot with him and Irene and the child, and they're it's just a side profile. It's just perfectly lined up, that shot, where you can see all three faces facing forward, and I really like that shot, amongst many. You can't go wrong in that movie. It's just absolutely gorgeous. And then they arrive, at the end of what they call the LA River, and it's disgusting. I know exactly what that's like, where you have just a trickle of sewage and a bunch of garbage, and this is like where Ryan Gosling goes to reflect and to hang out, and I should have realized that he's a psychopath at that point, Yeah. Absolutely disgusting, There's plastic bags hanging off trees, but they managed to have a good time, somehow. And anyway, so
well, you hit the nail on the head.
Kind of rambling, but
no, you hit the nail on the head, because that's essentially like an oversized sewage runoff, right? It's just like a storm drain, kind of isn't that where like the floodwaters just all go in California?
That's exactly what it is. Yeah. We on the map it's called the LA River.
Yeah.
But it's no river you want to visit, and we hardly get any rain here anyway. So it's really just a great place. Terminator 2. There's a shot there from Terminator 2.
Grease.
Sorry, that's where they shot some scenes for Terminator 2, and you'll see a lot of that in various films and stuff like that. But,
I think that's why that's the part of the film I like the least.
Really?
Yeah.
Tell me why. I'm curious.
Because everything else about this film seemed to break the cliche. You know, if this was a normal film, you'd have him sleeping with a married woman and then trying to help the husband because he felt his own guilt, kind of a crap. Or they'd ride off into the sunset together and they'd, be happily ever after. Or, she'd miss the first time and then he'd come back again and she'd see him and they'd kiss and it'd be whatever. And, again, using LA as a character, the location as a character, they set it up fine. They didn't need to go there to show that. Yeah, you're absolutely right, Eric. I saw Terminator. I saw 100 other, what was it, Chips or 100 other places, shows that have filmed in LA. How many times are there cars driving down that place? It's just...
It's a familiar spot. Yeah, and
it's so familiar. It just feels so out of place for this film that takes so much more of a deliberate breaking kind of cliche and telling its own story that it was the only cliche part. And I was like, I didn't need to see that. That really just the only part that really just went meh.
I get your point. I want to add to that though, because this is what and this is actually a combination of what Eric just said. There's an old film with Gary Oldman called Sid and Nancy, where he portrays Sid Vicious of the Sex Pistols. And one of the most beautifully shot scenes was him and the woman, I forget her name, that played Nancy. They're having a passionate kiss in a filthy alleyway while garbage is falling from the sky. Very metaphoric, but it's a beautiful scene. I definitely recommend you just Google Sid and Nancy alley kiss, and you'll see it. And, they have and to speak of, they do have an 80s synth thing because it was supposed to take place in the 80s. Beautifully shot scene. I think what Eric said in regards to this guy is taking her to a place that's pretty vile. It's not so much just the familiar rain, but the sewage it runs off to this sewage dump. And I think in his mind, it's because he even says you want to see something really neat, and it's a sewage runoff place. So I think it's almost endearing that this guy has no real concept of what's beautiful. Mm-hmm. This is beautiful to him, and because she's so enamored with him and they're enamored with each other, it could have been anywhere. I take your point though that it is. Yep. That is definitely cliche. I mean, I remember the first time I saw that. Yeah. It was either in Greece or Rebel Without a Cause. I forget. But yeah, it's definitely in L.A.
And I agree 100% with your interpretation of, how this dirty place is beautiful and the way, Eric called out the framing of the profiles. Those are both gorgeous. But it's like everything else was just done not cliche. Could you not have put it somewhere else and still ended up in the same spot?
No, and you hit a nail on the head. Let me ask you this: do you think it's possible? Because I think this film was shot in such a deliberate and careful way. Do you think it's possible that they maybe tried to go over the top with that romantic scene and make it super saturated with, this sweetness and lovingness because they knew where this was going to go, and they said, okay, let's give them this really Hollywood-like beautiful moment because we know that once the mask slips, it's going to go downhill real fast. So let's just give them this one moment of almost like a La La Land, pun intended, of this romantic visual. Again, maybe I'm overthinking it, but it did come off.
Here's a different thought.
Yeah, sure.
That's the only cliche part in the film. I think you're right. The director is incredibly intentional with everything he does, and it just laid it out so beautifully. Is there a reason that's a cliched location? If we're going with that this isn't some alternate reality, this is just kind of, a story being told today, you could argue that in other movies or other things, that's a very cliched, picturesque type place to go. Terminator 2 was 1991. There's nothing saying he didn't see Terminator 2 at some point, or that, that location wasn't somewhere that over his 5 years in LA, he knew was some place people went when they were trying to show somebody something, thinking of it intellectually, not emotionally. And was him taking her there his trying to be a normal person.
I'm 100% with you. It reminds me, and again, this is going into the vault. There was a film called Being There with Peter Sellers, and he was, I don't want to say he had a form of mental, let's say a disability. I don't want to say that, but he was very sheltered, and he did not deal well with people in a social setting. He was kind of shut down. I don't want to say Asperger's or something, but it was definitely a condition where he could not relate. And there was a scene literally where a woman was smitten with him, and because he was so mysterious and he really didn't talk, but that's because he had nothing to say. But she was trying to draw him in, and they were watching TV, and he's literally watching two people have relations on TV, just being very romantic, and he started mimicking them because that's what people do, not because that's what he was motivated to do. It's just, it's like pretending to be human, and I think you may I love that observation. Yeah, this is what people do to enjoy themselves. So this is what we do. Now we're enjoying ourselves. Look at us, but
respectfully, I'm not buying that. I just feel like this is a place that the driver goes when he wants to have some moments alone, and he wanted to share that place with her and the young child, and that's, to me, that was it. Period. That was my take.
Yeah. What's funny is because I'm also drifting into La La Land, because it's. I mean, let's be frank. LA has not that many romantic places. I mean, there's what the Scott, when you look over over the city from the hills, and you're looking over all of LA. That's kind of cliche. In La La Land, wasn't he like on a bench overlooking the valley, kind of a deal? I mean, But again, I'm not from there, so Eric, what are the other?
No. I mean, I think there are beautiful places in LA, but the driver does not operate in that world. He operates in the some of the worst places. I mean, there are much worse places, but he's not hanging out in Santa Monica, Malibu. I mean, he goes to the Denny's, right? That's like right next to the freeway. It looks like something right out of New Jersey, and then he works. He's looking at Echo Park. That's a very bad neighborhood. He hangs out watching the water, the sewage runoff. I mean, he does not operate in that world. He operates in the grease and the shadows, and so that's kind of where he operates, in my opinion.
I two quick things. One, I don't want to disparage New Jersey. It is, a lovely place filled with decent people. Secondly,
and Denny's is not exactly a common chain out in Jersey. Being from there myself.
Yeah, I mean, but I actually, to that point, I think, Eric, you hit a great observation where he is basically not living in squalor. He lives in his apartment. It's very small. Very. I mean, he's assembling a transmission, not a transmission, but like some sort of an engine part.
Carburetor.
Yeah, thank you. Carburetor on his kitchen table. So he's not living. He's just using that place to sleep and work. And it reminds me of the scene where he goes to, first of all, when he's in the garage and he meets her, his hands are like filthy, dirty hands. And secondly, when he meets Albert Brooks, and Albert Brooks extends his hand, he goes, "Yeah, my hands are dirty." Albert Brooks says, "My hands are dirty too." That's very on the very on the nose. But I think you hit the nail on the head. Is that he lives in this world of his own world that is just, it's just dangerous and dark, and he doesn't mind. He's very comfortable there. And I think because that's his world, the LA runoff in his mind is like a beautiful babbling brook, because in his world, look at this beautiful thing I found in this world. He doesn't know any other world. He's just saying, of the things that I'm exposed to, this is beautiful. So
I would say beautiful and peaceful.
Yes, away, definitely isolated.
Yeah,
which again is, but again, beautifully shot scene. I definitely take that point. It is, because again, like I said, I've seen that location many a time.
Oh yeah.
But I like what it was communicating in two respects. One, that to him that's something beautiful, and just the craft in which it was shot. I mean, the location aside, I think that the framing, like Eric said, was beautifully done.
Definitely.
And how they work that scoring. And again, I can't say not the score, but the soundtrack, because they do have interesting scores, but the songs they have, and they're not 80s bands. These are like I guess the resurgence of the 80s sound, with a lot of synth and it's just, I love the combination of that synthy kind of a slick, mechanical, also with, LA lit up, not, sexier. You see all the cracks and the patchwork in the road, and the flaws.
Yeah.
And him is just, he's right at home in this entire environment.
Yeah, I mean, Ryan Gosling himself just did an absolutely incredible job with this role. And I mean, to be honest, when you made this recommendation, and he was kind of the starring actor in it, the only thing that came to mind that he was in, besides, I think he was in the new Blade Runner, which I haven't seen, was The Notebook.
Oh, wow, that's a long time ago, right? Yeah.
So one of the things I was wondering, and wanted to kind of look for more just in future possible even movie picks, was when you take a comedic actor and put them in a dramatic role, chances are they shine. Robin Williams in a dramatic role is just an exceptional movie. It doesn't really matter what the movie's about. That sort of a thing. So if you take what would you call it? A romantic movie, a Hallmark movie, a love story movie actor, and put them in a sociopathic kind of emotionless role, is that also the same kind of recipe for success? Because they can kind of, so much of the hidden emotion that they would normally express kind of comes through when they're trying to be stoic. Because look, if you put Keanu Reeves in this role, who's arguably, rather emotionless in some of his roles, he's not going to sell the emotion, the kind of the love interest, the stuff as it goes.
Yeah, he better hit somebody if you're.
I think that's a really interesting observation, Logan. To kind of pull that to make that comparison, I think that's very interesting. I hadn't really thought too much about that kind of subject, but no, and to mention also, Logan, the Notebook that's where I think about Ryan Gosling. I mean,
yeah,
to me, I think that was one of his best works, and I mean, I know it's a very romantic movie, but I'm a romantic kind of guy, and that was a very touching movie. And for anybody who hasn't seen that yet, I don't care who you are, go see it. It's fantastic,
It is a great film. And here's the funny thing is, it's no secret that I'm a little on the darker side, or I like darker type films. My first Ryan Gosling film that I saw, and this is a while ago. This is long before The Notebook. I mean, he must have been like 19 or 20. It was a film called True Believer, where he actually played a skinhead. And it was very dark, very edgy. First time I ever saw him, didn't know him from Adam. And it was a very intense role. So that was my first exposure to him. So when he did The Notebook, I thought, that's fine. And Notebook was great. Not taking anything away from that. But the other films that I started to like him in were his indie work. And I for a while there, I was a little put off by him because he always had the same face. It was just this sleepy, stoic face. So The Notebook was almost a departure for me because I had come to know him through Full Nelson, where he plays a heroin addicted teacher in the inner school system. I had seen him in Stay, a movie where he was a suicidal artist with Ewan McGregor. I had seen him in My Blue Valentine, where he was a father and a husband in a failing marriage, but again, beautifully shot. So I love him in all these indie works where he always plays like just this, stoic, kind of morose character.
But, True Believer from 1989?
They may be it. Is he in that?
I don't see him listed. I'm IMDbing it right now, and I don't see him in there. So I just want to make sure we have the same film.
If it's not True Believer, it's definitely one of his earlier works. I'm going into the IMDb's. Let's see. It's The Believer.
Oh, okay.
Yes. The Believer.
Go figure, right?
2001.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. The Believer, 2001. I'll give you a quick synopsis. And this, now I'm remembering it when I saw this. This was pretty insane. A young Jewish man develops a fiercely anti-Semitic philosophy based on the factual story of a KKK member in the 1960s who was revealed to be Jewish by a New York Times operator. So, I'm sorry, it's a factual story. So this is based on a true story of a skinhead who was actually Jewish. And he played it amazingly well.
Oh my goodness! You know where I actually know him from first?
Disney.
The Young Hercules series.
Oh,
I don't believe it. I didn't realize it until I actually just kind of looked through now, but I remember that, and there was kind of a back when syndication and Kevin Sorbo and Lucy Lawless were all in their Hercules and Xena years.
Yes.
He was the Young Hercules spinoff.
I'm looking at that now. Yes, Young Hercules TV series back.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Anyway, sorry.
Yes. Whoa. No. It's. But again, here's the thing: is he? Again, at first I was very kind of put off with him because and he also did this amazing film called Lars and the Real Girl, where he played somebody who had a lot of social issues and anxieties. So what does he do? He goes online and purchases a real girl, for lack of a better term, and it's a doll, a life-size doll. That's, an autonomously correct doll. And he dresses it up and he dates it. And he lives in a very small town and the people love him. He's a very nice guy, but he's obviously got problems. So the people rally around this real doll that he has a relationship with. And he's like talking to her and the whole nine. And it's endearing and sad. But again, he's been doing some really interesting roles. And I'm sorry, it was Half Nelson in which he played the heroin addicted guy. But yeah, he did Half Nelson, Lars and the Real Girl, Blue Valentine. And then he went into, after Drive, he did A Crazy Stupid Love with Carell. And also his future La La co-worker, what's her name? Darn it. Emma Stone. Yeah. So he cleans up very well, and he's very attractive. And but he's also he brings the goods. So I like his range.
Yeah.
I'm kind of looking through his list of movies, and I don't know. He's got some really good ones, but there's some that I just don't connect with personally. They're not my favorites. So I'll just have to. I mean, I absolutely loved La La Land. I absolutely loved The Notebook. I thought he was fantastic in Drive. But in Lars and the Real Girl, I thought it was great too. But there are other movies where I just feel like he's just a face. And he's in there, and I just don't get much out of him, So
I think it's almost like the character has to be this. But he did do a more animated character in the Good Guys with Russell Crowe.
Yeah, I saw that.
It seems like he needs to be given the ability to flex his range. Because, let's be honest, he's a pretty babyface. So he needs to really be given that latitude to be able to explore everything that he can do. I mean, even in this one, you have some of that. He goes from kind of, when you're talking about those beats, when he's having a conversation and he needs to smile, you can literally watch him go, oh, I'm having an emotion. The emotion is happy. I need to smile. And he can actually slowly put on an endearing, genuine smile. He goes from his, typical kind of stoic, sociopath to a smile that doesn't creep you out. It's a genuine one. Like,
are we talking about the character or Ryan Gosling?
Yes. I mean, definitely the character.
Yes, question mark?
Yes, question mark? Definitely the character. But he can really kind of, it's not creepy. It's an endearing, true smile. And to go from sociopath stoic to smile that doesn't make you cringe, I mean, again, it's another aspect of, I think, what makes this movie work so damn well.
You hit the nail on the head. And I definitely want to say, when you're talking about the tenderness and just the silent emotion that you feel, but just in the air. I mean, it's ridiculous how, with the lighting and the score and those pregnant pauses that speak volumes. And then you go to this carnage, this totally, unhinged aspect of him. You know what it also kind of reminds me of? And I don't know if both of you gentlemen have seen this. Taxi Driver.
Have not seen that one yet.
You got to put that on your list. That is definitely on the binge list. And again, it's kind of like Joker in a certain respect, where it's a person who is very dangerous, very mentally ill, but finds solace in a little bit of relationship that eventually goes bad, and then they go completely off the hinges. But that's like a recurring thing. I mean, in Taxi Driver, Robert De Niro was in love with Sybil Shepherd, but he couldn't connect because he's a maniac. So he tries, takes her to a movie, right? Guess what movie he takes her to? Yes, a porno film, because he doesn't know that they're supposed to go see The Notebook. He doesn't go to The Notebook. No, he goes to a whole other type of film, and she's looking at him like, "What's the matter with you? Why would you do that?" And he's like, "I thought you would like it. It's a movie." So to that point, I think it's kind of borrowing a little from that aspect of a dangerous, mentally ill person who still wants to love, who still wants to go through those emotions and feel things. But it's just really, really hard, because no matter where you go, there you are. And so there's always going to be an elevator scene or a diner scene or a strip club scene, because that's who he is. He's the scorpion. And no matter how many times you pet it, it's going to end up stinging you. But I'm sorry, Eric, you're about to say something?
No. I guess I did want to ask you guys kind of about the notion that he wanted to keep giving back the money. He wasn't interested in keeping the money, and I thought that was kind of an interesting plot point. And I mean, I have my own thoughts about it, but I certainly would like to hear your opinions on that.
Logan, you go first, because I definitely have thoughts on that.
I mean, it was interesting because as much as he wanted to give the money, it was all stemming kind of from, Irene needs to just be out of this. Like, he didn't much care about himself. He accepted some sketchy deals. But at the same time, he also told her, you could just take this money and disappear. So
he did also say that he could go with her, but as an afterthought,
kind of a thing,
Yeah.
So no, he didn't care. The money was never his motivation. I mean, even taking the job, his motivation was helping essentially, get Irene's husband back on track. It was so anti-cliche of why it was almost genuine. I mean, as weird as that sounds for this film. So I mean, the money was just, it was never what mattered to him. Essentially, his drive and kind of the driving and just continuing to do what he was doing was most important. And if giving back all the money, let him get back to that and keep these people who he has this attachment maybe he can't fully understand safe, then money's irrelevant to him.
And to that, I want to tag on. That's an excellent observation. I would also say that the cliche thing would have been for him to give her the money, or like for her to find it at her door or something like that. I think if you think
Right.
it through, this is still mob money.
Yeah.
So somebody's going to come for this money. So I think there are two parts. He didn't want to give it to her because that would put her in jeopardy, but also maybe he didn't want, I don't think that he was motivated by money at all. He was not trying to squirrel away money so he could get a bigger table for that carburetor. He was just living to live because, and again, I want to keep going back to Yojimbo, where it's basically he doesn't have a path. He comes across people that are endearing and that he cares about, and then he will fight or do whatever he does within his skill set to protect them. Mm-hmm. So I think that, again, I felt a lot of echoes from Yojimbo in this, in that he shows up, he's a man with skills, definitely. He'll do whatever he can for a buck, but his morality kicks in when something touches his heart.
I mean, I think that's a great point, and I think that's why having seen Yojimbo and maybe looking for other kind of movies that originated the cliche or originated the trope may be the way to kind of go, so that when you're looking at Drive, you're not saying like, oh, this is like, blah, 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 that was in the 80s or whatever, when in point of fact, you actually are going all the way back to Yojimbo or possibly even before it. I mean, finding the root of where some of these cliches and tropes come from, I think would be really interesting to kind of see those first and then see how they've either blatantly copied or evolved or tweaked or just modified that story in such a way that the cliche becomes timeless in a way.
True. No, I could definitely see that. Something else. Two characters we haven't really talked about in detail was Ron Perlman and Albert Brooks. It's interesting because just by the dialogue that they have, you can get the sense, and again, Albert Brooks is a comedic actor. So to put him in this role of a heartless killer, kind of a boss, crime boss, is an interesting casting. As well, Ron Perlman's been in Sons of Anarchy, so he can play the heavy, obviously. But Albert Brooks, I found it really interesting that they put him in that role and that he was killing people without any. He was also a monster. Don't get me wrong. Him and the driver were like Scorpion and Snake. They definitely were on the same wavelength. And you could tell that when they were sitting at the dinner talking about how to exchange the money. And they kept cutting, doing the edit back and forth to them going to the car because they both knew what their goal was. One was going to kill the other. And it was just very interesting watching that kind of posturing and positioning of, yeah, it's about to go down. I'm seeing what leverage I can get on this guy before it happens. And at the end of the day, Ryan Gosling's just a younger, more capable guy, but Albert Brooks definitely got his licks in. And again, with the knives, that's very deliberate because most gangsters would use a gun and not try to use a knife that they, again, clean in the sink after utilizing, because he had like razors and knives and daggers and all kinds of things.
I think that box was a box of ones he used to kill people. I think that was his trophy box. So just to have that kind of come out was really an interesting kind of touch to the character at the end. I still had the problem that, I kept hearing Finding Nemo every time he started talking. So I had to kind of get past that. But it was just, I think to some extent, Ron Perlman was underutilized. To another extent, the writing didn't give him much more to do. So there was not, really much for much more that could have happened. I think there it would have needed to be a different story entirely to kind of really take better use of him. But I mean,
he had like one emotive scene when he was talking about his relationship with the gangsters and how they belittled him, using anti-Semitic terms, and so I guess that was kind of why he had the motivation. But again, they didn't really go into it.
No, and I mean, Albert Brooks channeled as Gene Hackman from kind of Lex Luthor kind of thing. That's all I saw.
That's exactly who I was thinking about. I was thinking French Connection or Unforgiven. Kind of like the
Gene Hackman, Lex Luthor, just kind of like a little bit more overtly dark.
Yes,
and it was just they were pieces to further the greater story.
Yeah, and I just thought it was interesting casting because they didn't have a lot to do, and they're such good actors. I did like the dialogue between Albert Brooks and Bryan Cranston in the garage. When again, this is a little cliche.
Yeah.
This is a little cliche when, the guy is trying to get out and he gets caught and everybody knows what's about to happen. He's caught. So it's just about getting from being caught to the death. And that's where the whole dialogue about, and Albert Brooks is so just jovial. He's like, I thought we could have really made a go at this car business. I really wish we could have done that. It's almost, you almost feel bad that it's just come to this. It's like, I really wanted to go into business with you. I got to kill you, but I really wanted to try. And it was an interesting dialogue.
And I feel like the mercy in the way that he was killed was really interesting too. Like,
it was.
Yes, the scene was cliche, but that part of it really wasn't.
He did give him kind of like because he even said to Ryan Gosling that he's just unlucky. So it's not like he had animus towards the guy. It was just like, you know what? Yeah, you're just a liability. I got to cut ties, no pun intended. But when he did it, he did it in the most humane way that he could. And he was even, very conciliatory afterwards. He's like, you know what? It's okay. It's done. There's no pain. It's done. It's done. Which you never really hear that, somebody trying to walk you out, so to speak.
Right.
I thought that was very interesting. Eric, what were your thoughts?
Let me ask you guys a question. And perhaps I missed something, but for me it was kind of one item that I felt was left up to the viewer, and that's the bag of money in the trunk of the car. My take on it was that Bryan Cranston knew that bag of money was there, and that he didn't spill the beans to Albert Brooks, and he took the hit, and he died.
Yep.
But he left the bag of money for Ryan and the girl, and that was my take on it. Did I miss something where?
I would agree with that completely.
I
thought
you would?
the exact
Okay,
same
all right.
thing, especially with Ryan Gosling's pause after he opened the trunk and just, it wasn't even a chuckle.
Right.
It was just that kind of, it's still here. Like,
and the fact that Bryan Cranston was literally leaning on the trunk when he was dead,
Yeah.
Okay, so that's what I summoned from that.
I totally saw that.
Julian, did you have the same take of that?
Here's the thing. I saw it both ways simultaneously. I honestly saw because Bryan Cranston and Ryan Gosling kept having this back and forth kind of a fun banter about, I could take the money, or I can, where's the money? And Ryan's like, stop it. I know you want the money, just stop. So because they had that banter, this is where I go. I honestly thought that Ryan Gosling put it in the trunk. First of all, because again, Ryan Gosling's not a mastermind. He's a killer. So to just put the money there is almost like it'll be safe here. He thinks I have it. I didn't know if he hid it there kind of intentionally, almost like this is the last place he will look is right here in his garage.
See,
but
because I feel like with Bryan Cranston's character, I don't feel like he would die for Ryan Gosling. Like, not for a second. He would totally give Albert Brooks the money. I mean, So that was a really like an interesting piece for me when I'm trying to figure out, did he keep the secret for him or did he not? Because like I'm not buying for a second that Bryan Cranston would hold that secret, but
I don't know.
I wanted to hear what you guys had to think about it.
I would believe it. I would believe it because he would, after 5 years, 6 years, know Ryan Gosling's character enough to know that his life was literally spared earlier when he gave up Irene. And there would have been no question that, like, look, this guy, I've seen this sociopath for 5 years and sent him on how many jobs? Like, I'm just dead. So the fact that he was spared, I think, would have resonated with him, someone who had kind of a human side. And then when you're looking at kind of that, when he says, where did he go? Where's the money? When Albert Brooks's character is kind of interrogating him,
like Mexico,
he pauses. Like you can see the lying on his face. Bryan Cranston is that good that it's just like, I am lying to you, but I'm going to tell you this, and I'm lying to you and everything. So that kind of blatant, he's already trying to protect him. He's already caring for him because he knows he's lying, and his face can't hide it. So is it that much of a jump to say that he's trying to, cover for the money too? I don't know.
I would.
I think I'm going to sit in the space where it's up for debate, and I'm just going to sit there because I just can't see it in his character that he's actually a good guy.
That's why I would say I saw both, because I could see now if there was just one, and again, literally a 3-second clip or a 3-second spliced in scene where Cranston looks at the trunk and then says he went to Mexico. That's it. But because they kind of left it open, which they do to the entire movie, again, remember, they don't give you a lot. They just show you stuff and force you to kind of mull it over, which I love, because again, it's not speaking the narrative. So it could have been either way, is that he knew it was there and took the hit to the he was the stand-up guy at the very end, or Ryan Gosling just knew who he was dealing with and hid it in the trunk because
both perfectly plausible.
And there we go. Both of us we have 2 movies instead of just one. But guys, I'll tell you what. This was an awesome movie.
Yeah.
Who's next in line? Is this Eric? You got the next one? You get the next pick?
I believe it comes to me. Yeah.
All right. Well, you work on something that we all can appreciate, guys. It means so much that you appreciated this because I'm trying to keep up with you in regards to cinematic quality, and just real quick, I will say, I just want to get everybody's 30-second. Thoughts on what they thought and what they left. I really appreciate also that, Eric, you saw it earlier when it first came out, as did I, and I've kind of seen it like maybe once every 3 years, just refreshing my mind, but I keep evolving with my thoughts on it, because absolutely, and I'll say this, this is my take on it. When I first saw it, I was underwhelmed, because again, I was expecting an action film. I was expecting heat. I was expecting a lot of chasing and shooting and action, and I got nothing that I was expecting. It subverted my expectations. But the more that I watched it later on, I was like, oh, this is a totally different film. This is not an action heist or a drama. This is about, and I didn't even get to the realization that he was a monster until this last time I saw it, because I was still picturing him as the protagonist. And I was like, wow, he's just trying to do the right thing for this family. And he's just, he's in this bad situation. I hope he gets out of it. And then just in this last time, I put it together in my head that, oh yeah, this is the Scorpion. The Scorpion has no good traits. He just basically is a killer who found an emotion that he could try to warm up to. But he's going right back to killing. No matter what happens, he was going to kill. Even if they got away, he would have bumped into somebody in a supermarket and probably end up stomping them in the frozen food section. That's just who he is. I'm being facetious. But long story short, I my opinion of this kept evolving the more I watched it, the more times I watched it. And I think that is one of the hallmarks of a great film, is that you can watch it multiple times and come away with different thoughts. That's my take on it. Logan, what would you say? Because again, you saw it in an amazing way. I definitely know you're going to see it again, but
I think I got very lucky seeing it silent. Being able to take everything in at such the pacing was really an interesting way. And I mean, how often do you get lucky enough to see a movie that can actually really just make such an impact without any sound whatsoever? Like I got very lucky with this one, which I'll attribute enough to that. And I look forward to seeing it with the sound and kind of again later. But it was beautiful.
I might have to see with the sound off again. I love that separation of senses homes you in on certain aspects to it. So I won't go on, but yeah, no, that's an amazing way to see it. And I don't think I'll do that on all the other films, but I definitely think that this is one of those stylistic films that would allow you to just look at the images, the beautiful cinematography, and just look at the words as opposed to listening to them, because it's not a heavy dialogue piece. And Eric, you good, sir?
Yeah, no, I really enjoyed it the second time around. And LA is definitely a character in this movie. They did a lot of locations that are kind of atypical, things that you wouldn't expect to see maybe in a picture that focuses in on Southern California, but more, really, I mean, this is a character study, and we get to meet some of the mobsters who they did a really good job of humanizing. The fact that Albert Brooks can't really get what he wants in a Chinese food restaurant, I thought was hilarious, because he's essentially the kingpin for the mob in Southern California, and they did a really good job to just kind of bring him down to earth and make it a mano-a-mano kind of situation, and someone that Ryan Gosling could actually bring down if he wanted to. So yeah, it's a masterpiece of cinematography for sure. The soundtrack score is fantastic. It's not easy to get really good shots at night. That's a relatively recent thing with digital photography. So, when you see that, appreciate it. But yeah, a very well-crafted movie with some unexpected moments and a very good piece of cinema. Great.
Yeah.
I'm glad we all dug it. And, again, talking these films through is, one of the highlights of my week, and definitely look forward to, the next one that we're going to bring to the table. I do want to say before we sign off, if you want to see some other good ones, I'm going to be putting together like a binge list of different films that I recommend, but I want everybody else to, have one for them as well. But since we're talking about Ryan Gosling, and I had mentioned some of these earlier, I would definitely recommend Blue Valentine. That one, it's beautifully shot, a good soundtrack, a great storyline, and he plays, again, an amazing character. And I did like Lars and the Real Girl only because he played a character that was troubled, but in a way that's also endearing. And another one that I liked that Ryan Gosling did, again, same director, very stylistic, brutally violent, but shot with a lot of neon, and the aesthetic is, you can't deny, is the one Only God Forgives. Same director, Ryan Gosling, so they have that chemistry going on. And again, I want to just, and do you guys have any films you want to recommend before we give the big adieu? Nope. All right. Well.
No, I mean, I think I look forward to seeing kind of more of him.
Absolutely. We got to start putting together a list. And, also one of the things I was going to hopefully try to add to this channel was the gist, where we can just, maybe all provide a quick summary of certain films, but line them all up so people can just digest and say, ooh, that sounds good, or that sounds interesting. Because sometimes it's so hard to just look at literally an entire list of films and pick what's next to go see.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, that's something that'll be in the works. Anyway, to all of our audience, thank you so much for listening to us and watching us, depending on your medium. And we want you to know that we really appreciate films, TV shows, all the things that are well crafted, and a lot of work that goes into them and just discussing them with you. So I want to say thank you again for participating. And remember, if it's worthwhile, it's worth binging.